Culture is everything, and without boundaries and rules, you're set to fail. Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. I'm in my hotel room in Singapore. I'm just here chilling out, doing a bit of work. Wanted to make sure that I keep cranking these podcasts while I'm away. If the audio quality is a little bit different, it is because I'm just trying to figure out how to make this thing work. I want to talk about culture because over here, it is amazing to see the culture and the cultural differences and how it operates in Singapore. Now, you're probably well aware that Singapore is a very financially abundant country, but it wasn't always that way. Singapore used to be a pretty average, pretty poor place. And what ended up happening was that they had great leadership that came in and created clear culture and clear boundaries around what they wanted, what they expected, and what the rules of engagement were for the country. And so what happened was Singaporeans got together, the leadership banded the Singaporeans together, and they decided that they were going to create a clean country. And so there was going to be great pride in the country itself. So they knew that it would have to become a very clean place. Crime will pretty much be almost non-existent. I mean, if it is, it's probably more financial crimes than anything. But the crime here is almost non-existent. A lot of the people that I've been hanging out with who live here say that you can pretty much leave your handbag or your wallet on the table, walk off, go to the bathroom, come back at a restaurant, and it'll still be in exactly the same spot. You can do it at a cafe and no one's going to steal your stuff. They have very strong drug crimes, as in if you get caught with drugs, it's death penalty. But also as well, they have other things. They were telling us a story about that they knew someone who was an Australian who they came over as like a sporting team. And one of the males from the sporting team smacked one of the local women on the bum, just a bit of a tap on the bum. And anyway, he ended up doing jail time and he was locked up, I think, for 3 days. And you need someone from Singapore to actually come and bail you out. So you can't have your Aussie mates come and bail you out. You have to have a Singaporean who is a local and they have to come and bail you out. But I think they said it was a $5,000 fine as well to get bailed out. So bail was $5,000 for smacking a woman on the bum, and that's their laws. And then they have to go through a court process as well, where, you know, if you want to come back to the country, you have to go through that court process as well and be found, you know, not guilty or that, you know, you're sorry for your crimes. So what I found really, really interesting was this has a lot to do with business, and it also has a lot to do with how businesses operate and how countries and governments operate. Now, what's happening quite a lot at the moment in Australia and America is that there is a very strong influence that everyone should be the same, everyone should get along, that you should adapt your boundaries to make other people feel comfortable, that rules should change if someone just doesn't like them. And that creates a really clusterfuck of a culture. And so when you don't really have clear values and you're not driving behaviors through those values and also punishing and reprimanding people through those values, or if you've got a business, not only punishing, reprimanding, but also firing and removing people who aren't congruent with the values and the mission of the organization, then what can happen is that it becomes a bit chaotic. And so that's what happens around the world in countries, but it also happens quite a lot in business. You know, if you say that discipline is important in your business and that's one of your core values of the organization, that means that everything that the organization does needs to be based around being disciplined. So one of our core values as a company is communication. So if you have poor communication skills, I'm probably going to train you and develop you. Potentially over a period of time, I'll reprimand you if there is communication issues, and eventually you'll get fired. And that's because of the values of the organization. We just don't stand for poor communicators within the team or even within the community. Like, I'll get rid of poor communicators in the community who just bitch and moan about stuff for no real reason because it creates a problem. Now, some people get pissed off at that. Obviously, you know, a customer that gets fired doesn't like that. They're going to get all pissed off and talk shit. But the thing is that that's what has to happen because that's the culture of the organization. It has to be reinforced by leadership, by management, and also by the team. We have another value of ours, of our business, which is driven. And that means that we get shit done. So if as a team we commit to stuff, and one of our other values is accountability. So if we're accountable for something, we say we're going to get shit done and we don't get it done. It's Friday afternoon. Then the team work back. That's just what happens because that's our culture. Now, unfortunately, in Australia, people complain about that. And they go, well, yeah, but they don't get paid to work. No one gets paid by time to work because time isn't really a productive measure. It might be, but it's not really. What it is what can you produce within the time frames? Now, unfortunately, some cultures are shit where hard workers will be punished because they might work a 38-hour week, do double the amount of a non-productive staff member, and they still get paid by a standard 38-hour week. So that's shit for them. It's also shit for the people that are poor employees who don't perform at their best, because they're essentially getting paid to do less per hour. But all businesses and all economies and all people essentially run on a productivity scale. So the more productive you are, the more money you can make. So if someone can, let's say, install 2 water heaters in a day, they're going to be less valuable than the person who can install 3 within a day, providing that it's done by the same quality and the same standards and so on. And this is why automation is important in businesses, process is important in businesses, because it allows people to work more effectively and more efficient and produce more over a period of time. Now, where Australia has a problem is that a lot of people are rewarded for being non-productive. And so if someone says, well, I've worked my 38-hour week, they'll just leave and go, well, I don't get paid to put up with this shit. But the thing is that the business runs off of productivity. So profit is made through productivity. And most people go, yeah, but it's fucking profit. The thing is, though, that business growth happens through profit. So unless you have profit, the company can't grow, which means it doesn't hire more staff. You don't end up with more cash flow. More cash flow means hopefully better working conditions and stuff like that. You know, if you start a business, the chairs that you buy might be $10 chairs, but they can end up being, you know, amazing, comfortable, fully ergonomic chairs that are $150 each if the business has profit. Also, you've got to remember taxation, all that stuff gets taken out. When there's a downturn, like let's say COVID, a business might take a hit for 2 or 3 months. So they might lose, you know, a good amount of money. If they don't have that money available, then the business goes bankrupt and everyone loses their job. So businesses have to have profit for that specific reason. There has to be cash available if there is a downturn. Let's say you have a slow month. So the government come out and the Federal Reserve and they put up interest rates. So people stop buying your product or your service a couple of months. You know, the handbrake goes up. If that happens, then the business goes bankrupt if there's not extra cash available. And that normally happens through profits if the business is running well. So coming back to culture, it is important to set a culture in business, and most businesses do really bad. In fact, I was talking to someone over here who worked for a large legal firm in Australia, and they were saying how bad their culture is in the legal firm because the juniors come in now and they won't work overtime. They don't really want to be pushed. They don't like being spoken to in a harsh tone. They will take mental health leave if they feel a little bit of pressure. And they said when they started in the legal industry, it's a high pressure industry. And so they said they essentially started off as a shit kid who worked their ass off, and now they're, you know, under 40 and they're earning good money. They're able to travel. They do some pretty cool jobs, but it's because they push hard. And they said just the young guys just don't have it these days because they just can't handle the pressure and the stress. But the problem is if you're putting workers like that with hard-working people, who's going to leave? Are the young recruits going to leave because they're pissed off because they don't like pressure and they don't like stress? Or are the hardworking people going to leave because they don't like doing triple the work for the same amount of pay or having to take the load off of everybody else? So that's what happens when you develop business or corporate cultures where the values are not clear and they are not congruent. So a lot of the time people have values, but they're not congruent. Business might say, well, you know, compassion is important to our organization. But the truth is, for the high-level leadership, they don't give a fuck about compassion because they're trying to make a profit. Now, if that's the case, they're trying to drive performance. If that performance isn't happening, then they get pissed off. But the thing is, they don't have performance as a value. They have, you know, kindness and happiness and joy and empathy and peace and fucking harmony and all that shit as their values. So they can't really drive performance. So the company is incongruent. They actually have an incongruent leadership from the top. The person that I was talking to yesterday, they said, how does that become a problem in corporate business? And I said, because the CEO is not setting the values of the organization. They leave it to the HR department. And most HR departments are pretty weak and pretty soft and pretty fluffy. So most HR departments, it's essentially a social science, or, you know, people normally go into that field from studying social sciences or from studying psychology or something like that. And they can be very altruistic type people. And so you get altruistic type people who work for a large organization that is very driven to financially grow. And so now there's a mismatch. You essentially are hiring staff who are softer and who can complain to HR and who whinge and moan, and HR's there to take care of them and make them feel good. Whereas upper level management and leadership are trying to grow the growth of the organization. So they're pushing. If the HR department or human resources department sets the culture, then the bosses or the heads of the organization or the CEO or the C-suite people can't really set the culture. So that becomes a massive problem in the organization. So that's one of the problems. Then the second thing is the hiring strategy is really, really poor. And then from there, management and leadership don't have each other's backs. Like if you're driving performance and performance is important, what does performance mean? So you have to sit down and create very good guidelines. You've got to create the right reporting so that then you can filter out the people who aren't performing at the best and you can get rid of them. So everything has to be in alignment with the culture. And I speak to business owners every week who they might drive a business. They'll start hiring staff. So say they're a small business, they start their business, they start building it, starting to make a profit, they hire staff. And then what happens is it just ends up an absolute clusterfuck because now they've got staff who aren't congruent. Everyone doesn't think the same. They're not all heading in the same direction by their behaviors, by the way they think, by their emotions. And so that creates a huge problem in the organization. The way to fix that is you actually have to create a company guide. That company guide is setting the values, the vision, and the mission very, very clearly. Then from there, everything gets built off of that. If you don't have that, you don't have a proper marketing strategy that's congruent. You don't have a hiring strategy that is congruent. You don't have a sales strategy that is congruent. So when someone says to me, we don't have a culture guide, we've never really thought about the values of the organization and we don't really drive it in every management meeting that we have, then what I know is that there is going to be problems in the business in regards to staffing, and they're going to lose a lot of money and productivity is going to drop and the owners are going to be stressed, or the C-suite, CEOs, CFOs, all of those people are going to be stressed out because there's going to be underperformance within the team. So what does this have to do with Singapore? Well, Singapore has done a great job of drawing a line in the sand and saying this is what we will do and this is what we won't do. We will draw a line in the sand and say if you litter, you will go to jail. Therefore, this country will be clean and it's spotless. I've seen one piece of rubbish in 3 days on the street. One piece of rubbish in 3 days. They do not have it because if you get fined doing it, you go to jail, okay? Or there are massive fines imposed. So they drive the value of cleanliness through their culture. They do it by rules. They do it by punishment. They do it by how they lead people. And this is what most organizations don't do, even most countries. Australia is one of the most fucking sloppy countries, and so is America at the moment, where they're just not driving a clear direction through the values of the country. And so like if you think about Australia will say, well, we have a culture, we want to grow our business culture. But then at the same time, that's cool to say that. But then the question is, does the behaviors of the government allow that to happen? Sometimes maybe, sometimes no, sometimes yes, which means then that there is poor management within the leadership of the country, which is, the politicians there. Then that gets passed down to the governmental departments. And then that gets passed down through the communities and so on. And that becomes a huge problem. I saw it today where there was a politician in Australia who was challenging the dress code in Parliament. And she was wearing Crocs. Right, Crocs of all things. That's a fucking joke. Because if you say this is the standard, and then someone comes along and says, well, I don't want to conform to that standard, well, you've got two choices. You either fuck off out of Parliament, or you conform to the standard because that is the standard. The problem is that most people don't have standards these days. They don't have standards in their family. They don't have standards in their business. They don't have standards in the way that they operate. They'll just let things slip all the time. They let themselves get away with stuff, so they let their family get away with stuff. They let their friends get away with stuff. Rules and boundaries are there to stop people crossing those boundaries. Now, yes, boundaries have to be tested sometimes and rules have to be changed. But at the same time, any form of culture is driven by the values of the organization or by the country. So when you start bending rules all the time, you start adapting for everybody else, it shows poor leadership, poor management, and also there's not very good communication. Because what should happen is that everybody gets together and they say, right, are we going to allow Crocs into Parliament? Yes or no? The answer is either a yes or a no. And then there is a line in the sand that's drawn and then that's it. Now that normally comes from a mission. So what's the mission of the country? Is the mission of the country to just be relaxed and chilled and just let people do whatever the fuck they want? Maybe. Or are we drawing a line in the sand like Singapore have done and said, we are going to be a clean country. We do not allow this stuff. If you go certain places, they won't allow it. The dress code is the dress code. If you don't dress appropriately, you just don't get in. And there's no bending that rules. You can say whatever the fuck you want, but that's not what happens. In some countries like Dubai, I was speaking to some people last night and they said over there they have speed cameras everywhere because speeding is something that they take very, very seriously. So if you get caught speeding, then they can impound cars, they'll crush the cars, they can take cars away from you. There are huge fines imposed. There are penalties that go with that because to them, that's an important thing for their country. Now, other countries, not so much. So I guess what I'm saying here, people, is that in your life, you have to clearly define your boundaries through your values, your mission, and your purpose. You have to have a success map for your life, which is what I teach in my Thrive Time event. The next thing is if you're a business owner and you do not have a clear company guide, then hit me up on Instagram. Let me know and say, hey, just type in the message company guide. So send me a message on Instagram, say company guide, and let's have a chat and I'll help you build your company guide. We'll have to do some work together and get that sorted. But it'll probably save you so much time, money, and stress from not understanding how to drive performance within your business because you just have the wrong culture and you'll hire anybody or you'll hire the wrong people. You waste a ton of money, a ton of time. People get away with stuff. Management won't know what direction to go in. I mean, it's the foundation of everything. You know, if you don't have a proper company guide with those foundations, it's almost impossible to drive good quality marketing and branding as a business, which is why most business branding sucks and everyone just copies each other in their industry. So anyway, Driven Mofos, I want to share. Hope you're having a great day. I'm having a great day here in Singapore. It's nice and warm. It's late at night. I just wanted to record this tomorrow morning because I know everyone will be waking up probably earlier than what I will. But anyway, have a great one. Keep kicking ass. Remember to DM me or send me a message on Instagram with the word company guide and let's have a chat about how I can help you with your company guide. Anyway, take care everyone. Have a great day. Most people waste their life and I just don't want you to be one of them.